Hey, what's happening? Today we're talking about different types of interview questions, and there's many different types, so I'm going to try and classify them a bit for you. So, in an interview, you'd usually expect to get anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 questions. I would say you're probably not going to get 10 interview questions in an interview. Most interviews last between 15 and 30 minutes, and that only leaves time for 2 to 5 questions. But there's many different types, and it's really important to be able to identify the type of question you're given so that you can appropriately answer it, so you can determine what exactly they're looking for. So the first type we're going to talk about are your typical interview questions, and these are kind of the boring ones of the bunch, but they're just typical historical questions that have been asked over time. And the reality is, less and less companies are using these typical questions, but you might still see some simple things like, why should we hire you? And other open-ended questions like, what do you bring to the company? Are you a team player? These are pretty typical open-ended, really loosey-goosey kind of interview questions, and they're actually not as much anymore, but you might still see them in an interview. Some other ones: tell me about yourself, what experiences do you have, why do you want to work for us? Those are all typical sort of questions. What are your strengths? Things like that. Another type of question you need to be really aware of is negative questions. And negative questions are kind of a trap. And they're getting you to say things like, what are your weaknesses? And describe your worst boss. Those are all questions that require you to talk about a negative subject or describe a conflict you've had with someone. What irritates you is another popular question. It's kind of a negative question, and it's trying to get to see if you're going to talk bad or talk basically negatively against anyone you've worked with in the past, or any experience you've had. The trick to these questions is to think long and hard about a weakness, and then come up with something that can still be to your advantage. Or if you're asked, what are your weaknesses? You might say, you know what, I've had a lot of trouble with a particular issue, but these are the steps I'm taking to work at it and resolve it. So if you say you have trouble remembering things, so say you've been working on carrying a notepad with you all the time and writing down everything you are asked to do, so I always remember, and you can always look back in your notebook. So that's taking a negative and saying how you've compensated for that negative ability. Another type of question, and these ones are kind of fun, these are creative type interview questions, and they're trying to judge what your creativity or what your creative abilities are. These can be simple things like, sell me this pen, or things like, how would you improve on a yo-yo? They're designed to completely throw you off balance and to maybe see what a bit of your personality is inside. However you answer this is okay, as long as you're not like, I don't know, what would you do with a yo-yo? You're right. They want to see your creative thinking skills and to show that you're original and can come up with unique ideas of your own. So the best thing you can do is think for a couple seconds and come up with something really awesome and crazy. Don't be too shy or too closed off to think that you can't say absolutely anything. You can pretty much, if you can support your ideas, you can pretty much say whatever you like here, as long as it's appropriate for the interview. But don't be too shy to think that they don't want you to answer that question in a certain way. The reason why they asked you something like, how could you improve on a yo-yo, is to see what creative thoughts you can come up with. And the worst thing you can really say is, oh, I don't know. Some other ones are problem-solving type questions, and for these questions, they not only want you to come up with an answer, but they want to be able to see what sort of logic and steps you took to resolve this answer. Some traditional questions are, how many cars or SUVs would fit in the sun? quite a large, complex question, but they want to see if you're able to think on your feet and solve problems on your own. Another popular one is how many pieces of popcorn would fit in this room. So you need to see your logical thinking skills so that you can logically think about the size of the room, the size of a popcorn, the area, volume, all sorts of stuff like that. Some other problem-solving questions. A popular one is you're trying to make toast, and you put the toast in the toaster, and you walk away, someone's at the door, and you come back, and you expect there to be toast, and there's no toast. What do? Well, they're looking for all the steps you would take to solve that problem. If your first answer is, oh, I must have to call the electrician, that's not demonstrating your problem-solving abilities. They want to know, can you successfully deduce the exact problem or weed out possible problems before going for help. And the last, and probably what I would say right now is the most popular style of interview question, is what's called behavior-based interview questions. Now these ones are really popular because they require you to draw from experiences from your past to answer a specific question. An example would be, give me an example of a time where you've demonstrated leadership. And that question could be drawn out more in terms of to cater to it and what sort of results conspired, what were your actions, and all sorts of things like that. When you see a behavior-based interview question, and this is pretty much any interview question that is requiring you to take a story from your past and apply it to the job you're applying for. Things like resolving conflict, showing initiative, leadership, communication skills, teamwork skills. These are all using behavior-based interview questions. So the best way, and there's a model for answering these, is using what's called the STAR method. And the STAR method is an acronym, and it's STAR and a bonus R. Stands for situation. So in answering the question, you would describe the situation that you were involved in. The tasks would be, T is for tasks, would be to describe your specific objectives or goals or responsibilities to resolve this problem. Actions is what the A is for. A is for actions, and that would be the specific actions you took to help resolve that issue. So things that you did, and you would say, I did this, not anything like as a team we did this. They want to know specific actions that you took to resolve that issue or conflict or demonstrate leadership or communicate, problem solving, anything like that. The first R is for the results. As a result of your actions, what happened? Were you successful? Were you not successful? Maybe even what you would do differently. And then the final R is for relate. And this is how it would relate to the job you're applying for specifically. For an outline of all this, let me just switch over to the screen here. For an outline of all this, you can see here I'll be publishing a web file on my website that contains a complete outline of behavior-based interview questions. So the STAR method for responding to a behavior-based interview question, again, was situation, explain the problem in as many details as required. Try and keep it this simple. You don't want to get too elaborate. T is for tasks. What were your goals, objectives, or duties required to resolve this problem? Actions, the specific actions you took using I. And this proportion actually usually requires the most detail. You usually want to fill this up with lots of actions. Result, as a result of your actions, what happened, were you successful or not? And the last R is for relate. And this is actually the most important of all the sections. And this is where you speak to your ability to resolve the aforementioned problem and how it relates directly to the job you're applying for. So it's really important to take care of those. So this concludes the video, and there's a note available on my website explaining exactly the behavior-based interview questions and some sample questions. So check out mrvaughn.com to see more information on this subject.